How much do you think you know about housing matters in BC? For example, what if you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing? According to the 2011 DHI, you're in what's called core housing need. Many of us aged 18 to 27 fall into this category, because along with core need, there's also the deep core, which is when you spend more than half your income on housing. So what does this mean? It means we don't have enough money for food, tuition, medical care, or clothing. The majority of us in the housing core need end up renting. In fact, half the people in Vancouver are renters, and in some neighborhoods, 80% rent their homes. One of the problems with renting is that the landlords are guaranteed a raise in rent of at least 2% plus inflation each year. So in a year when inflation is 2%, the landlord can raise the rent by 4%. What does this look like? Well, say my rent is $1,400 for a 2-bedroom house, which, by the way, is a really good deal. If I could even live there for 10 years, my rent would go up from $1,400 to $2,070 over the course of the decade. That's $6,780 extra dollars over 10 years. But if you get evicted, the landlord can get way more than 4%. They can get as much as the market will bear. In 2011, the downtown Vancouver average vacancy rate for apartments was 0.7%, which is less than one available apartment for every 100 on the market. So what about the people that can't find a place to live? The homeless. In 2004, 29% of all homeless people in Vancouver were 24 and younger. Of that 29%, 13% of them were under 18. So how did they get there? Most would say drug addiction, but that only plays a small part of the why. Drug addiction and mental illnesses are only responsible for 13% of all homelessness. However, housing issues like people not being able to afford rent, houses no longer being livable, plus people in between moves and those who've been evicted, altogether that adds up to 65% of all homeless people. Governments would say social housing is the answer, but only a small number of these people are being helped. Social housing is housing developed and managed by government agencies and nonprofit groups for low-income residents. Because the federal government pulled out of funding this kind of housing in 1993, it's been left to provincial governments to provide funding for these units, and the lineups are extremely long. Very few social housing units have been built recently. Canada is the only member of the G8 without a national housing strategy. In Canada, according to the DHI, the average amount you're supposed to spend on your house is 3 times your annual income. It's considered severely unaffordable when the amount is over 5 times your annual income. In Vancouver, you're looking at 10 times your yearly salary to buy a house. Vancouver's average list price for a home hovered close to $1 million. So unless you're making $100,000 a year and you're willing to pay a 25-year mortgage, owning a house is almost completely unattainable. Sorry. We're the generation that needs to know about housing matters. Inform yourself.